Hi, welcome once again to yet another edition of Oh Heavens, where we're thinking about what happens in heaven, what that looks like, what we can learn, and how it helps us in our understanding of what is yet to come as we live through this life, trying to become the person that God has created us to be. So each week in this series, or each episode of this series, we ask a question. And the question is designed to spark a thought or two and maybe come up with some answers. These are questions that a lot of people have and probably questions that you have. And sometimes you voiced them and sometimes you haven't. And so let me ask them for you. Today's question is once again about angels in this episode. And the question is an interesting one. Has God created more angels since their initial creation? I don't know if you've ever thought about that before. To be honest with you, I have not thought that much about that question until I read the question. And then it got me thinking, is there anything that I'm aware of in the Bible that would lend itself to say yes? Or is the evidence that we have in the Bible enough to say no? And so I'm going to admit to you before I give you the answer that I'm going to give you the answer based on what I understand Scripture to say. But this one is not necessarily clear-cut, and so the answer can't be definitive. Personally, in my study, I can find no biblical reason to believe that God has created any more angels. And apparently, there's no reduction in their number either, because angels don't die. So in my head, and again, in my limited reasoning ability, it would seem to me that God knew exactly how many angels he would need when he created them. And since they don't die, he has the angels that he needs. So some would argue, but a third of them left when Satan tried to overthrow God. Doesn't that mean that God is a third of the angel army short? No. Because God knew that that was going to happen when he created the angels to begin with. Because why? Go back to a previous episode. God knows everything. He can be everywhere. He can do everything. And so he would already know that. And so the thought process would be that that is the contingency plan, if you will, that God put in the mix. He knew what was going to happen. The angels had the opportunity to exercise their free will, and a third of them left. But it left God with more than enough. And we find out as history plays out that it will be more than enough. And there's nothing in Scripture that leads us to believe that angels reproduce. According to Jesus' statement in Matthew 22:30 that angels don't marry, then they're not up there having angelic babies. And so there's not a heavenly maternity ward where angels are birthing out baby angels. If you want a baby angel, you have to go to Krispy Kreme Donuts and then get one as it comes right off the conveyor belt. That's the baby angel. At least that's the Jeff Dixon translation of the Bible, which I wouldn't bank on being accurate, but it just means I like donuts. But that's a whole different story. Eating a Krispy Kreme, as Tim Hawkins says, is like eating a baby angel. Who am I to argue with Tim Hawkins? Anyway, there's no angel babies coming along. We've got all the angels we need. It doesn't appear that we have more. I know that some of you are out there thinking right now, though, but there's some angels that are mentioned in the Bible, in the film. And there's something about those angels that's a little bit different. And I have questions about that. I bet you're thinking that. I would be if I were you. If you've ever heard the stories, I would be thinking that. And you might be saying to yourself, Jeff, are you going to tell us about that? Not in this series, I'm not. But maybe another time, another series, another place, we'll look at that because that too is worth a study and it's really fascinating. And I have a couple of stories I could tell you about that would really be interesting. And you say, well, if you're not going to talk about it, why are you telling us about it? So you keep watching. That's why. Oh, heavens, we're done. We'll talk again next time about the things we find in heaven.